Hey everyone, I want you to imagine something for a minute. What if we could give our planet Earth a full on health checkup? Put it on the examination table, run some tests, and see what's really going on. Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do, using the science of environmental chemistry to read the lab results. And that brings us to the big question for today. If the Earth were our patient, what would that health report actually say? If we put a stethoscope to its chest, what would we hear? Is it doing great, or are there some, worrying symptoms we need to talk about? To figure that out, we first have to agree on what a healthy planet even looks like. So before we can diagnose any problems, we need a baseline. We need to check the vitals. What does a healthy, thriving planet look like on paper? That's what this first part is all about. The science that lets us read these vitals is called environmental chemistry, and you can think of it as the lab that processes all the tests for our planet. It helps us track the chemical fingerprints in our air, water, and soil, and it shows us exactly how our activities are changing the Earth's basic chemistry. Okay, so first up, breathing. A healthy planet breathes a very specific mix of gases. Our atmosphere is this really precise recipe, about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, which is what we need to live, and then just a tiny 1% of everything else. It's an incredibly delicate balance, and it's what makes all life here possible. And all that life is supported by three massive interconnected systems. You've got the atmosphere, which is all the air, the hydrosphere, which is all the water, and the lithosphere. That's the land under our feet. Honestly, you can think of them as the planet's respiratory, circulatory, and skeletal systems. For the planet to be healthy, they all have to work together in harmony. All right, so we have our baseline. We know what a healthy planet's vitals should look like. Now it's time to look at the actual health report. And, well, the results are in, and they're pointing to a pretty clear diagnosis. And that primary diagnosis is a word we all know: pollution. It's a really simple idea when you break it down. We are adding harmful stuff into the environment, and that's throwing those vital systems we just talked about completely out of whack. It's basically like a poison slowly entering the patient's body. And this isn't just one isolated issue. This sickness is affecting every single one of the planet's systems. We see it as air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution. You can even have things like noise pollution. So now let's get into the specific symptoms that come from this diagnosis. So what does a sick, polluted planet actually look like? What are the symptoms we can see and measure? Let's take a look at some of the biggest ones. So our first major symptom is something called acid rain. And no, this isn't just rain that's a little bit off. We're talking about rain that can become as corrosive as vinegar. Or even worse, it's chemically contaminated with nasty acids that are really, really bad for the environment. So how does this even happen? Well, it's a pretty straightforward chemical chain reaction. Factories and cars release pollutants like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides up into the air. Once they're up there, they mix with the water vapor in the clouds, and that triggers a reaction that creates sulfuric and nitric acid. The key thing to remember is what goes up must come down, but it comes down in a much, much more dangerous form. And the damage this causes in the real world is, well, it's huge. Acid rain messes with our food supply by damaging crops. It literally eats away at stone buildings and historical statues. And it seeps into rivers and lakes, turning them so toxic that fish and other aquatic life just can't survive. Symptom number 2 is basically a planet-wide fever. We call it global warming. It's this slow but very steady increase in the Earth's average temperature, and it's caused by a buildup of certain gases that trap heat in our atmosphere. So, the main culprits are greenhouse gases. You've probably heard of carbon dioxide and methane. They act like a blanket around the Earth. Sunlight gets in and warms us up, but this blanket of gases doesn't let all the heat escape back out into space. And the effects of this fever are serious. We're talking melting glaciers, rising sea levels that threaten our coastlines, and a major increase in extreme weather all over the world. Our third major symptom is ozone layer depletion. Now, you should think of the ozone layer as Earth's natural sunscreen. It's this amazing protective shield high up in the atmosphere that blocks most of the sun's dangerous ultraviolet or UV rays. The problem is, that shield is getting dangerously thin in places. And what's causing this? The main villains were chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. They used to be in all sorts of things, like aerosol spray cans and old refrigerators. When these chemicals get into the atmosphere, they just obliterate ozone molecules. And as that ozone shield gets weaker, more harmful UV radiation gets to the surface. That directly leads to higher risks of skin cancer and eye damage for us humans. And it also hurts plants and damages entire ecosystems. Okay, that was a lot. We've looked at the vitals, we've gotten the diagnosis, and we've seen the symptoms. It all sounds pretty grim, I know. But this is the point in the checkup where things change. Because every diagnosis should come with a prescription, right? A plan for getting better. This is what we can do to help our patient heal. The first prescription on the list is one you've definitely heard before, but it's still so important. The 3 R's. Reduce how much stuff we consume in the first place. Reuse things instead of just throwing them out. And recycle materials so they can get a new life. It's a really simple formula, but it's incredibly powerful for cutting down on waste and pollution. But the treatment plan doesn't stop there. We can actively help the planet heal by planting more trees, which are amazing at absorbing CO2. We can switch over to clean energy sources like solar and wind. We can get serious about proper waste disposal, and even our small individual choices, like taking the bus or train more often, really add up to make a huge difference when we all do them. So, there you have it. The planet's health check is done. The diagnosis is pollution, and the symptoms, as we've seen, are serious. But the good news is, we have a very clear prescription for recovery. We know what to do. So the final question really isn't about what can be done, it's about what role each and every one of us will play in the planet's recovery.